You gotta believe me. I know you won't believe me. No one else does. I told my parents, I told my teachers, I told the police, I told the newspapers, I've even written to the President of the United States. I may as well have told my pet turtle, Mabel. Which I did. I just saved the world from weird aliens from outer space. Uh-oh, I can almost hear you thinking, weird aliens from outer space. This kid must be nuts. But I'm not, really. The whole thing started because of the flying saucers, and the flying saucers started because of the no TV rule. I must be the only kid in the entire world whose parents won't have a TV in the house. TV rots your brain, my dad says. There are plenty of things to do. You don't have to sit in front of that box that tells you how to think, my mum insists. My parents are old hippies from the 60s. They believe that stuff. So the only TV I get to watch is at Robbie's house and at Melanie's house. They're my best friends. I try to catch the most popular shows so I don't sound like too much of a geek when everyone talks about them. But I don't watch much. To make up for no TV, my parents brought me a telescope a few years ago. It was nice of them, I guess. They knew I like reading science fiction about outer space and stuff. When you don't have a TV, there's not much to do after homework. So I started watching the sky every night, and I started to see flying saucers. Some were round with red and green lights, some were shaped like paper towel rolls, some were big, some were small. It was truly amazing how crowded it was up there. Most of them turned out to be weather satellites and stuff from Earth, but others were real. I swear they were. Sure, no one else saw the flying saucers, but nobody else watched for them. My mum and dad just laughed. It must be an airplane. Stanley, my dad would tell me, or a bird, dear, mum would add. He just wants attention, my older sister Laura said. She was the one sneaking out early to put on makeup, to get the attention of Herbie, the high school heartthrob. Stanley is a geek, offered my little brother, Dan. He was the one who made giant balls out of aluminium foil. And I was a geek? Ha! All my teachers thought I was telling stories, and when I called the police, they treated me like a nut. Then there were my so-called best friends. Stan, said Robbie, best friend number one, you are a total weirdo. Now I can tell you that I'm not a weirdo. I'm a perfectly normal 12-year-old guy. I'm in 7th grade at Piscopo Junior High. I'm 5 feet 4 inches tall. I have brown hair and blue eyes. And I wear wire-rimmed glasses. I'm good at maths and science, and I play a mean game of hoops. He just has a good imagination, said Melanie, best friend number 2. Well, that's probably true, but I don't make things up. Not things that count. Look, I told Robbie and Melanie, I can understand if my family doesn't believe me. I can understand if my teachers don't believe me. I can understand if the cops don't believe me, but you are different. We've been best friends since we were wearing diapers. Melanie sighed. Stanley, we are your best friends, and we've been your best friends for a long time. That's why we think you should give this outer space thing a rest. There isn't enough room up there for all the flying saucers you've seen. And that was that. Until 2 days later, Wednesday, July 12th, the night that would change my life forever. It was 11 o'clock and I couldn't sleep. I felt crummy. It was really hot in my bedroom. Sweat dripped down my neck. I stared at the green digital numbers on the clock next to my bed. 11:01, 11:02, 11:03. I couldn't sleep. I got up and trotted downstairs. I poured myself a glass of carrot juice, my parents' favourite drink, and then I stood at the back door. I stared out the window. It was hazy and dark. A crack of lightning flashed across the sky. Then came the thunder. Kaboom! It made me jump. Then it started to pour. At first, I thought I saw another lightning bolt. I squinted and stared hard. Something flashed, but it wasn't lightning. I ran upstairs to my bedroom. My telescope sat in the window. I pointed it at the flashing light to take a better look, and what I saw made me sweat harder than ever. A flying saucer. Round, big and bright with lots of white lights around it. The lights kept flashing, which is why it looked a little bit like lightning. It floated above the ground over one of Mr. Tribble's cornfields. I rubbed my eyes. Was I dreaming? I didn't think so. I pinched myself on the arm just to be sure. It hurt. The saucer suddenly lifted off and shot away. Mr. Tribble had a bad reputation. He used to chase kids off his land with a pitchfork. He acted mean and strange, and his wife seemed just as weird. Nobody showed up anywhere near his farm if they could help it. But I couldn't help it. I had to go over there. I had to see what had happened in that field. I pulled on my jeans and t-shirt. I picked up my sneakers. Carefully, I tiptoed downstairs. I didn't want to wake anybody. I wanted to see what was going on for myself. I opened the front door and sneaked out. It was still raining, but I hardly noticed. I ran all the way. Finally, I reached Mr. Tribble's big red barn. I tiptoed over to the end, then I peered around the corner. The cornfield was empty, but then I glanced down. I noticed something weird. It looked as if someone had burned a circle in the ground. I walked slowly over to the burnt part. I reached down to touch it. Something had been here. When I turned around, Mr. Tribble stood behind me. His eyes were glittery and angry, and he carried a pitchfork. "What are you doing in my cornfield?" Mr. Tribble demanded. "Mr. Tribble," I gasped, "am I glad to see you? A flying saucer landed in your cornfield. Look at those marks." "There wasn't anything here," Mr. Tribble said sharply. "But you had to see it," I cried. "It was here a minute ago, then it flew away." "No, nothing here," Mr. Tribble repeated. He started walking toward me. His eyes glittered. He bared his teeth. The pitchfork glimmered in the dark. I ran. The next morning at breakfast, I told everyone my big news. "And I think Mr. Tribble knows something," I finished. "What do you guys think we should do?" "Pass the whole grain toast," Laura said. Dan said with his mouth full. "Dan, don't talk with your mouth full," my mum warned. "Look at this, the factory is closing," my dad groaned. "Another defeat for the workers. It says right here." And that was that. My friends were no better. "Look, Stan," Robbie said, "this has happened before. It's just your imagination." "Imagination? My foot!" I yelled. "Come on over to the field and see for yourself." "There is no way I'm going over to Mr. Tribble's farm," Melanie shivered. "He is totally creepy." "All right," I said angrily. "Suit yourself. I'll figure out what to do alone." And I did. I came up with a brilliant plan. I decided to get my dad's camera and take pictures of the burned circle. Then they'd have to believe me, wouldn't they? The next night, I wore my clothes to bed. I pulled the covers up to my chin so my parents couldn't tell. I had Dad's camera under my pillow. I was ready. I just had to wait until everyone fell asleep. Stared at the clock, 11:46, 11:47. I planned to leave at midnight. I looked out the window and then I looked again. The spaceship slid down into Mr. Tribble's cornfield. I grabbed the camera and quietly ran out of the house. I crept past Mr. Tribble's house. I could see the light from his TV through the window. I breathed a sigh of relief. If he kept watching TV, maybe he wouldn't come looking for me. When I reached the barn, my heart practically stopped beating. The flying saucer stood right there. It was much bigger than I thought. It was about as big as a football field. It was bright and shiny. There were stairs going up into the center of it, and walking up and down the stairs were them. The aliens, the things from outer space. They were big too, the size of Mr. Tribble's cows, but they didn't look anything like cows. They didn't look like anything else I'd ever seen, except in nightmares. Their skin was a mucus green colour. They had giant mushed-in heads with big glittery eyes. They had tentacles all over their heads where their hair should be. They walked on 6 legs. 2 arms grew out of their backs, and instead of hands, they had giant claws. A slimy green goo dripped from their bodies. My mouth dropped open and I started to shake. I wanted to get out of there. Fast. But I couldn't leave. I had to see what they were doing. A few aliens held strange-looking silver instruments. Every few minutes, they pointed them at the sky. And then 2 aliens slithered right toward me. Had they seen me? No. The aliens started to talk. Their voices sounded gloppy, as if they had bad colds. And to my surprise, they were definitely speaking English. "We are almost at stage 3, slobbered alien number 1. "This signal will be the final one." "It is the Earthlings' own fault," slobbered alien number 2. "Sending television waves out into outer space gave us the idea." "Once we learned their language," alien number 1 said, "and we understood the importance of television to them, it was just a matter of time. It has been 10 long years. The invisible messages we have been broadcasting through their TV programs have made them weak and stupid. Earthlings do not believe in flying saucers. They think we are science fiction." Alien number 2 snuffled. Maybe it was laughing. "This last message will finish them," alien number 1 continued. "They will not be able to resist. They will be helpless before us. They will simply give up." "When do we broadcast?" alien number 2 asked. "In exactly 20 Earth hours," alien number 1 answered. "We start at 8 o'clock tomorrow. What the Earthlings call prime time." I couldn't believe my ears. All these years, TV really had been weakening the human race, just as my parents said. Maybe the no TV rule had been a good idea after all. The 2 aliens slithered away. Then I saw a big door open in the top of the spaceship. All the aliens stopped what they were doing and turned around to watch. I heard a whirring sound. A big silver dish rose out of the ship. It looked a lot like a TV satellite dish. That's when I remembered the camera. I had to take some pictures. With my luck, they probably wouldn't come out, but I had to try. My hands were shaking so hard I almost couldn't work the buttons. When I had taken about 5 pictures, it happened. I felt a little tickle in my nose. It grew and grew. I didn't want to make any noise, but I couldn't help myself. I sneezed. 5 aliens turned around and stared at the spot where I hid. Before I could move, they darted towards me. My heart pounded in my chest. I tried to yell, but all that came out was a croak. I couldn't breathe. I tried to run, but my feet felt as if they were stuck to the ground. One of the aliens carried a silver bag. The creature, it took out a kind of tube. Another alien grabbed me. The first one jammed the tube into my side. "Ow!" I cried. Then everything went black. When I woke up, it was dark. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. Something had strapped me to a table. I was on the spaceship. I picked my head up and gazed around. The only light in the room came from a giant TV. It hung in the air about 6 feet in front of me. "Just watch the television," a gloppy alien voice said in the darkness. A rerun of Star Trekkers was on. I had heard of the show, but I'd never seen it. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to watch, but the alien voice said, "Open your eyes, human." Something in its tone told me I'd better listen. So I did, and I watched for 3 hours. I expected to feel strange. I expected to get hypnotized or something, but nothing happened. I guess you had to watch a lot of alien TV for their waves to work. Suddenly, the TV went blank. "How do you feel?" asked the alien. "Fine," I replied in a flat voice. I tried to sound hypnotized. Good, said the voice. Now go home. You have not been here. When we come, you will be ready. I will be ready, I said again in my hypnotized voice. The next thing I knew, I found myself outside the spaceship. I wanted to run, but I thought it wouldn't be a good idea. I had to pretend to be under the alien spell. So I just strolled away, slowly. Inside the house, I raced upstairs to my parents' bedroom. My legs were weak, my chest burned. I could barely breathe. Mum, Dad, there's a flying saucer, I gasped. They caught me, and they were sending a TV signal out that will make us all slaves tomorrow night at 8. We've got to do something. My dad sat up in bed. My mum opened her eyes. You had a bad dream, Stanley, Dad told me. Go back to sleep. No, it was real, I yelled. You've got to believe me. You've got to. Stanley, Mum sat up too. It was just a dream, but I'm glad you're beginning to understand why we don't watch television. Go to bed, son, my dad said. We'll talk about it in the morning. The entire world is in danger and you don't believe me, I wailed. Then I remembered the pictures. I have pictures, I cried. I took them tonight. They prove it. I reached around my neck for the camera. It was gone. The next day, Saturday, I called Melanie at 8 o'clock in the morning. I think I woke her up. I didn't care. I told her everything. Stanley, Melanie sounded unhappy. This is really getting too strange. Could you just stop it? I can't stop it, I told her. I'm telling the truth. Yeah, right, she muttered. When I called Robbie, it was the same story. Sure it happened, Robbie said, and I come from Jupiter. I decided to try the police. Hey, Officer Banks cried when I walked up to the station. It's the flying saucer kid. See another one, kid. A couple of the other officers laughed. I just stared at them. They wouldn't believe me either. I left the station. I looked around. It was a normal sunny day. People walked around. No one knew that the aliens were about to take over the world. No one seemed to care. I cared, and I had an idea. The aliens had built something to send out their weird waves. Maybe I could build something that would get in the way of them so they wouldn't reach anyone's TV set. Maybe I could build a mirror to reflect the alien waves back at them. I raced over to Robbie's house. I need to borrow some money, I told him, as much as you have. How come? He asked. To save the world, of course, I told him. Robbie didn't believe me, but he did lend me the money. So did Melanie. They are pretty good friends. I raced over to the supermarket, I grabbed a cart and I filled it with every single roll of aluminium foil in the store. When I got to the checkout, Mr. Barnes looked at me and blinked. What do you want with all that foil, Stanley? He asked. Science experiment for school, I lied. The total came to $134.59. I didn't have enough money. My parents will come in tomorrow and pay you, I told him. If the aliens don't win, I added under my breath. I dragged the foil home to my garage. I started building my giant mirror. I ran out of foil when the mirror was about twice as big as my dining room table. Then I carried it to Mr. Tribble's farm. Luckily, silver foil doesn't weigh a whole lot. I made sure no one saw me with my mirror. I hid it in the woods behind the barn. Then I crawled closer to see what was going on. The alien ship sat there. The satellite dish appeared ready. It looked awfully big. I didn't think my little foil screen would do the trick, but I was running out of time. It was already 6:30. Then I had another brilliant idea. I raced home. I crept into my brother Dan's room and I stole his gigantic foil ball. I never thought it would come in handy. I guess Dan isn't such a dweeb after all. The foil from the ball made my screen a lot bigger. I still didn't know if it would work, but I had to try. I managed to haul the screen up to a high branch of a big maple tree. From there, I could see the alien satellite dish. I only hoped the aliens couldn't see me, but they didn't seem to be around. Maybe they were in their ship getting ready. I pointed my screen right in the direction, and then I waited. At exactly 8 o'clock, a blue light came streaming from the alien dish. I held my breath. The light hit my reflector and bounced right back to the alien ship. I waited. That's when the blue light went out. I held my breath. The alien dish pulled back into the ship, and then the ship took off straight up into the air. The last I saw of it, it was soaring toward the stars. I left the silver foil up in the tree. I don't know what happened to it. Mr. Tribble probably thought some kids were playing a joke on him. And then I went home. And what was I supposed to do? Tell someone? No way. Maybe the flying saucer will come back, but I doubt it. My guess is the aliens got a dose of their own medicine. They're probably flying through outer space right now, watching reruns of I Love Lucy and slobbering all over each other. I saved the world from weird aliens from outer space, but no one will believe me. I finally did tell Robbie and Melanie a few days later, but they just asked for their money back. Then I tried telling my parents one last time. I totally agree, my mum said. TV could definitely take over the world. Pass the tofu, my dad said. How do I look, Mum? My sister Laura asked. I'm going out with Herbie later. You stole my aluminium foil ball, my brother Dan glared at me. I just know it. So that's the end of my story. So unless the aliens come back and I can get some pictures to prove the whole thing happened, I spend a lot of time behind my telescope these days. Hey, over there, did you see those flashing lights? It's back. Look, the alien ship is back. You believe me, don't you? Just kidding, guys. It's just me. Hey, look, if you are after more chills, thrills, and... did I mention chills? Please subscribe to the Leftovers channel. I'll be doing a whole bunch more super spooky material, especially the Goosebumps book reading. I've tracked down every single one of those 10 tales to give you goosebumps, and I will be reading each story. So subscribe, hit that little bell icon so you can keep getting notified. You know how the system works. And yeah, tune in next time for some more Leftovers from the Leftover Culture Review.